Okay, Bez Hashem, today's daf is Masechtas Sanhedrin Daf Ayin. I'm just going to very briefly, just finish off the Gemara, discuss what the Gemara is discussing yesterday, and then we'll just start a new thing, a brand new topic, Mishnah. But basically, the Gemara was discussing yesterday that how do you know that in the Chumash and the Tanakh, where do you find that 8-year-olds gave birth? 8-year-olds fathered a child. So the Gemara where we left off yesterday, and I'm just going to speak it out outside, is going to say that Avram Avinu married his brother's daughter. Avram Avinu had a brother Haran, and Haran had a daughter Yisara, who also his name was Yiska. And of Haran, the Gemara proves that Haran had Sarah when he was 8 years old. So that's what the Gemara says. You see that in the Chumash, in the Bible, people were having children when they were 8 years old. So the Gemara rejects that, and perhaps it's not true. And maybe, and the basic point of the rejection is that maybe Avram is not the oldest of the children, and therefore you don't have that kind of a proof. And that the Gemara brought that from Noach, which lists his children, Shem, Ham, and Yafes, and it's not in chronological order. Sometimes the Torah lists the most smartest kid as the oldest kid. So finally, the Gemara concludes, and I'm going to say the conclusion is that we do find in the Chumash that 8-year-olds fathered children. And that is because B'Tzalel ben Uri ben Hur, which we're going to read about him in this week's Sedra, his grandfather, Hur's father, was Kalev. And it turns out when B'Tzalel was born, Kalev was 26 years old. So 26 years old, and Kalev was already a great-grandfather. B'Tzalel is the great-grandfather. So is the great-grandson. So how's that possible? Is Kalev had Hur when he was 8 years old, Hur had Uri when he was 8 years old, and Uri had B'Tzalel when he was 8 years old. So that's the only way it can work out. And the Gemara concludes that's the proof that you see in the Chumash that 8-year-olds have children. Then that was just to prove that's why Beis Shammai held that could even apply Bisman Hazeh. Then lastly, we're going to read this Gemara. Back to Ben Sarah Mara. The Gemara says Tanya. Okay, we're going to start from the 2 lines from the bottom of Daf Samach Tesam at Beis. Tanya, we learned in the Brisa. Rab Shimon said that it's always a boy that's a Ben Sarah Mara. Bidinhu she'di bas ru'uya liyas keben Sarah Mara. Maybe, really, it would make sense that a daughter, a girl, could also be a Ben Sarah Mara. If she has this addiction of eating meat and drinking wine, so she could also be a Ben Sarah Mara. Why? Because whereas what's the whole point? Why are we killing a Ben Sarah Mara? Because if he has this addiction of eating meat and drinking wine, he's going to kill somebody eventually to feed his addiction. So a girl has a way, and maybe she won't kill people to feed the addiction, but she will sell herself as a zayna, and therefore she will machshel people in Averis. So it should have been, the Torah should have made this concept that a girl could also be a Ben Sarah Mara. But the Torah says Ben v'loy bas. It's only a boy and not a girl. Shahakoil mitzuyin eitzla be'avera. You would think that a girl, everybody, she can always sell herself as a zayna. El gzeres hakosev. It's the Torah declared it gzeres hakosev. Ben v'loy bas. A boy and not a girl. That's what it is. Okay, now the new Mishnah. What does the Ben Sarah Mara have to do wrong? So the number one thing that he has to do wrong is steal money from his father. The next thing he's going to do is going to buy with the money. He has to buy a tartamar. I don't know what weight is that. A lot of meat, and drink a half a lug of wine, of Italian wine. Italian wine is very special, and it has an addictive quality to it. So therefore, that's what he's going to be held liable. Rabbi Yossi says mana basar v'loig yain. It's a mana of basar and a loig yain, maybe a double the amount that the Tanakama said. So he has to eat a little bit more wine, a little bit more meat. Now, when he's eating that meat, if he's eating around bums, let's say, wayward people, then obviously they're not going to give him musar, and they're not going to stop him from doing what he's doing. But the Mishnah says, "Achol." But if he eats bechaburis mitzvah, if everybody's doing a mitzvah, let's say they're at a bris milah, even if he's around bums, but they're all sitting down for a meal and performing having a sudas mitzvah, and he brought his own meat and wine, so then he will not become a ben saramar. That's not counted because they're probably gonna, he's doing a mitzvah. It's gonna arrest the addictive quality of that meal. Ochal be'ibur chachodesh. If he ate in the parties that they used to make for the Ibur HaChodesh. Ibur HaChodesh was when Rosh Chodesh would come on the 1st, and the day before was the 30th. So at the night of the 30th, the night before they would make a sort of a party to show that the previous month had 30 days. This month will have 30 days, and then the following day will be Rosh Chodesh. Like we have this Shabbos, this Friday is the 30th day, and which is Rosh Chodesh, and then we have Shabbos as the day one. So they used to make a party on the 30th day at night, and everybody would bring, let's say, wheat and barley or whatever, rice. So they didn't eat meat, but it has a din like a chudas mitzvah. And so if this boy joined that party and brought his own meat and wine, he will not become a ben saramora. If he stole his father's money, Meiser Sheni, and went to Jerusalem and bought meat and wine, which is what his father would have done anyway, so he will not become a ben saramora. Let's say he bought meat, but they were not kosher meat. Now here, why? So then he will not become a ben saramora, and the reason is because the parents have to say he's not listening to us. But if he's already buying nevelis and treifus, if he's buying non-kosher meat, he's not listening to God either. So that does not make him the zigzeres hakasiv, that he will not become a ben saramara. Shkatzim over here means he buys tummy birds. He's eating shark meat, or amasim, or crawly things. So he's not listening to God either. So he's not going to become a ben saramara. Achal davashu mitzvah v'davashu avera. He is eating something that could be a mitzvah and something that could be an avera. We'll see more about that in the Gemara. Or achal kamacha. He stole his father's money and he ate something, but it wasn't meat. Achal basa. He didn't eat meat. Shasa kalmashka. He drank any kind of beverage. Shasa yain. And he didn't drink wine. So does that make him a ben saramar because he stole money from his father and mother? The Mishnah says that you don't become a ben saramara until you eat meat and drink wine, until he stole money and buys meat and wine. Shenema zoilel v'soivid. The Torah describes this ben saramara as zoila, a glutton, and an overdrinker and a drunkard. Even though the Torah doesn't describe what the word zoilel means and what the word soive means, we know from other places where the Mishlei says, the pasuk says, "Al ti b'soive yaim," don't be a drunkard on wine, b'zoile basa lamai, or somebody who's gluttonous over meat. So zoilel refers to meat, and soive refers to wine, and the Torah describes ben saramara as he's doing these two things of overeating on meat and overdrinking on wine. Amma Rab Zera. And again, the point is that if he does these things, he's going to have this addiction. And to feed his addiction, he'll eventually kill somebody. So we tell him, with the Ben Saramara, the parents say to the Bezdin, kill him now before he kills somebody else. Says the Gemara, Amma Rab Zera says, Tartema ze ein yedeo mahu. This tartema, I don't know what is the value, what's the weight of a tartema of meat. Ella, since mitoich shekafel Rabbi Yossi b'yayim nimtza koifel af bebasar, since Rabbi Yossi doubled the wine, whereas the Chachamim said, the Tanakama said a half a lug, and Rabbi Yossi says a whole lug, apa basa. So basa, if Rabbi Yossi says a meat was a mana, so nimtza tartema, the tartema is chatzi mana, is a half a mana of meat. Whatever a half a mana is, that's the opinion of the Tanakana. Now, he steals money from his parents. Let's say instead of buying, regular priced meat, he buys the most expensive meat and wine. So then he doesn't become a Ben Saramara. Because what's the Ben Saramara doing? He's getting into something that leads to an addiction. And basically, if it's too expensive, so that means in order to feed the addiction, he's going to have to steal more money, a lot of money. So that itself is a deterrent. It's only if he's buying cheap meat and cheaper wine. Amar Rabbi Yochanan bar Mailoda Amar Rav Huna. You don't become a Ben Saramara until he purchases basa bazal, cheaper meat, v'yochel and eat it, yayin bazal v'yishta, and cheap wine and drink. The ksiv zoil v'soiva, he has to have this addictive quality to it. And when something's too expensive, and in order to feed the addiction, he's going to have to rob a bank. So then that's not something he's going to do anyway. So he's going to be deterred by that. He's not held liable. The meat has to be raw, and the wine has to be raw. Now, you can't drink raw wine, and you can't drink raw meat. So first, the Gemara asks, it's not so. If he drinks raw meat, totally raw meat, and he drinks totally raw wine, he does not become a Ben Saramara. Ravina squared this whole thing off. When we say that a Ben Saramara means he's stealing money, and then he has to be able to prepare it that it's very potent, and prepare it fast, like fast food. And that has an addictive quality. You can steal a little money, and then you can make it potent and make it fast. So when we say yain chai and he drinks raw wine, mazik v'loy mazik, it's diluted but not so diluted. Even though most people dilute their wines a lot, if he doesn't dilute it a lot, that's will make him a bain saramura. Basa chai, what is called raw meat? It doesn't mean he's eating raw meat. Bishil v'loy bashal. It's cooked but not so cooked. Kibsar kiba the achli ganavi. It's like the roasted, barbecue meat that a ganav will eat. It's very easy to prepare and very fast. So it may not be so fully cooked, but it's enough to feed the appetite and feed the desire. So that's what kind of meat and drinking of wine that he has to do. So Rabbi Rav Yosef, the Amar Rabbi and Rabbi Yosef both said, let's say he ate salami, or drank wine from grape juice. He does not become a Ben Saramara. But they didn't explain what makes meat like maliach, salted. It means it's not such good meat. So in the time of when this was written, there was no refrigerators. So what the Gemara is going to come to the conclusion is that if the meat is a day old, something like that, then already that's not and it does not have that kind of an addictive quality. And if the wine is below 40 days old, that means they squeeze the grapes, even though wine could become wine after 3 days, but if they squeezed it and it didn't stick around for 40 days, it's not a potent drug anymore. It's not as potent, and therefore you don't become a Ben Saramara. So Tanan Hasan, the Gemara just speaks out what I said. Erev Tisha B'Av, lo yechel adam shnei tavshilim v'liyachal b'ysav v'liyishta yain. On Erev Tisha B'Av, a person should not have two cooked foods, not to eat meat, not to drink wine. V'tana, we learned in a brayso, aval oichlu b'sar maliach v'shoysi yain megite. But you can eat salted meat, salami, and drink grape juice. In the time of Chazal, I mean, because the point of not eating before Tisha B'Av is to eat something that makes you happy. Eating salted meat and drinking grape juice does not make you happy. What is salted meat? If you salted the meat and it's older than 3 days. What's grape juice? As long as it's within 3 days, then it's grape juice, and therefore you are permitted to eat that grape juice on Erev Tisha B'Av. So the Gemara's question is, Hachamai, by Ben Sara Moira, how are you going to determine what's salted meat and what's grape juice? Hasam over the Emishim Simchahu. The Erev Tisha B'Av, we're defining salted meat as what does not bring you happiness. So Kolzman Shika Shlamim, as long as it's less than 3 days old, it brings you happiness. Name Ispe Simcha, you have happiness with that kind of meat. So as long as it's 3 days old, Hacha over here, Mishim Umshuchehu. Here, by a Ben Sara or Moira, it has to do with addiction. So how old does the meat have to be that it means it's not addictive anymore? So the answer is v'chol shehu, a little bit. If it's past one night old, let's say you shechted it this afternoon, and the whole night passed, the next morning this is not good meat anymore, and therefore it doesn't have that addictive quality, and the person will not become a best sorry of my loy mimshach. It will not draw him any further. The yayin ad mem yoim, and wine means it has to be 40 days or older. Then it's a drug. Then it's potent. But if it's still within 40 days, it's like grape juice, and it's not addictive. Says the Gemara about wine. Rab Chanan explained. The wine was created only to situations where people suddenly lose a loved one. So that calms you down, and to pay the reward to Rishoyim that makes them happy in this world, so they feel on top of the world. The Gemara is describing, why did God create this drug of wine? And the answer is sometimes you need it. If a person lost a loved one, you need it, and also to pay the Rishoyim if God does not want to give them reward in the next world, so God gives them this drug in this world. Rabbi Yitzchak said, why does the pasuk say, Altera yayin ki yis adam? Don't look at wine when it's red. Altera yayin shma'adim pneim shol rishon ba'olam hazeh u'malbim pneim la'olam haba. Don't look at wine, because wine reddens the face of a Rush in this world. It gives him happiness in this world, but when he gets to the next world, he'll be white as a ghost because he'll be embarrassed. Rava says, Altera yayin ki yis adam. He darshans the pasuk altera yayin. Don't look at wine. Don't become addicted to wine. Sha'achrise dam, because at the end it leads to bloodshed. Again, when people are not in control of themselves, they can do murder. Rav Kahana acts the stira kisiv tirosh v'karin and tirosh. So the pasuk calls wine tirosh and it calls it tirosh. So zocha, if you merit and drink wine when you need it. It's like an anti-anxiety medicine. Then nasa roish, it can make you on top of the world, so you can accomplish a lot. But loizach, if you don't merit and you abuse it, nasa roish, you can become poor. Rava asked the contradiction. Ksiv yisamach, or karinin yisamach. It says yishamach, or karinin yisamach. Zocha, if you're lucky mesamchay, it makes you happy. But if you over and abuse the wine, misham it can make you insane. Okay, Rava said, why did it become such a great amoira? Because chamra, I used to drink wine, v'reichani, and I used to smell good fragrances, pakchen, and that opened my mind. So you got to use these psychedelics sparingly, and wine. But that's Rava said that's what made me smart. Amar Rav Amar Berei Rab Shimon Rab Abba Rab Chanina. Why does the pasuk says lemi oive? Who has woes? Who has pain? Who has lemim danim? Who has quarrels? Lemi siach? Who has complaints? Lemi pitzaim? Who has wounds? Chinam lemi chachlilas anayim? Whose eyes are red? Lema'achrim alayayin laboyim lachkem imsach. People who carry over wine, and they're always looking for the next type of diluted wine. Diluted mixture, the next cocktail. So what do we ki also Ravdimi Amar? He explained this pasuk. Amar b'marava. They said in Eretz Yisrael, Haikra man the darish leimereish l'seife midrash. Whoever darshans this pasuk from the beginning to the end, that says if you want pain, if you want complaints, if you want to fight, then you stay around wine. Midrash, that's a nice way to darshan the pasuk. U'mesefer l'reisha midrash, but you could also darshan it backwards. That means, who is wine for? For somebody who is in pain, somebody who has a lot of woes, somebody who is in quarrels and needs to calm down. Or l'misiach l'mipsoim chinam, if you're a Russia, then wine is good for you because we want you to get all your reward in this world. Ki aser rav. Okay. Darish Oved Gilai. In the Oved Gilai, they darshan. It says a very interesting thing in the Chumash. By Parshas Noach, it says Yid Gimel Vav and Nemer Bayayin. It says 6 times the word Vav. Vav Yud. It says it Vav and Yud. So Vav Yud is the Jewish way of saying Vai. And Noach messed up, so to speak, with wine. And therefore 13 times the Torah says this word Vai, 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 Vai. Vayachal Noach Ishwa Adama V'yita Karam V'yesh min hayayim V'yishkar, he got drunk V'yiskal B'soich Aloi V'yarchom as Erves Aviv V'yaged Le'acha B'chutz V'yikach Shem V'yasas Simlo V'yisim Al Shechem B'nei Shneim V'yechu Achanar V'yichasu es Erves Aviv Ufneim V'yikatz Noach Miyenim V'yeda Eis Asher Loi B'noi HaKatan. So we see that 13 times the Torah describes the word Vai in the script describing Noach's mishap with the wine. So Rav Shmuel had an argument. What did Chum do to Noach that he cursed him? Chad Amar Sarse. Some say he castrated him. V'chad Amar Ravoi, and one said he sodomized him. Why would Chum castrate his father? Because he didn't want him to have a 4th child. He had Shem Chum V'yafes. So, Mam be'elma serse, if you learn pshat that Chum, the 3rd child, castrated his father, because he caused his father not to have a 4th child, that's why Noach cursed Chum's 4th child, which was Canaan. And that's why he cursed him to get him back. But if you learn pshat that he got sodomized, how do you know that Noach was sodomized? Gama v'yar v'yar. You have Gzer Shava yar yar. Ksiv Havar yar Chom Abi Chanan Eservas Aviv. Ksiv Hasam yar Oiser Shechem Ben Chanor. And there it's talking about a rape. So v'yar Chom is talking about he raped his father. So Gemara asks then Bishlam L'man Yamaser. So if Chom castrated his father, B'Shem Hachi Kilei B'Revi, that's why his father cursed his 4th child. Elamanda Ravoy. But if Chom, the youngest child, sodomized his father, my Shnaravi, then why did Noach get him back by cursing his 4th kid, Canaan? Niltai B'Adyeh, you should curse him directly. Answers the Gemara, Hava ha have. Everybody agrees that Chum castrated his father. That's why his 4th son got cursed. But according to this opinion, not only did he castrate his father, he sodomized his father. Then the Gemara now darshans things about Noach. Yochel Noach Ishwa Dama V'yita Karam. Amar Rav Chizda, Amar Rav Ukva, Amar Mleimar Ukva, Amar Rav Zaki. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Noach. God said to Noach, why did you plant the vineyard? That's the first thing you do after the Teva. You should learn from the first man. That he only sinned with the Eitz Hadas is because he ate grapes. Command the Amal, like the opinion that says, the tree that Adam Rishon ate from was Geffen Hoya, was a vine, a grapevine. Tanya, we learned in a Brisa. Rameir said, Adam Rishon mimenu Geffen Hoya. The fruit that Adam Rishon ate was a grapevine. We go to Amid Beis. Shein l'cha devava shemevi yalala b'Adam eliyaim. There's nothing that brings sorrow to a person, and it must be wine. So that was the sin of the Eitz Hadas, that Adam Rishon and Chava ate grapes and wine. They ate wheat. Because a kid does not know how to say father and mother. In other words, he has no das, awareness, until he tastes his first piece of wheat. So it must be that it's called Eitz Hadas. The Eitz Hadas was a wheat tree, so to speak, wheat. But Nechemia says, it was a fig tree. The things that they messed up, that's how they fixed themselves. They tied the leaf of a fig tree to cover their nakedness. So there must be that the sin was with a fig tree. So either it was a fig tree, wheat, or it was a grapevine. Now we're back to the discussion of wine. Divrei Lumiel. These are the words of Shlomo HaMelech. He's called Lumiel. He did everything L'Shem Shemayim. Melech Masa, he held a load, Asher Yisrato Imai, that his mother chastised him and rebuked him and gave him Musar. What Musar did Shlomo HaMelech get from Bathsheba, his mother? When Shlomo was a young kid, he hung around wine and partied a lot. And he was a smart kid. Amar Rab Yochanan Mishum Rab Shimon ben Yochai. Melamed, Rab Shimon ben Yochai said, Melamed, this teaches you, Shekafa'ato ima al amid. Basically, his mother tied Shlomo HaMelech to the post and whipped him, basically, almost, whipped him. And he said to him, what are you doing? Ma bri, ma bitni, ma bar nadore. Ma bri, what are you doing, my son? I'll call yodim shavicha yirei shemayim hava. Everybody knows that your father was Yirei Shemayim, David. So the fact that you're turning out to be a party, a playboy, Akshav Yomru Imagar Malay. People are going to say your mother was the one that caused you to do these things. You're taking after your mother. Mar Bar Bitni, they'll say, look what I did for you with my stomach, because somehow Basheva during the pregnancy with Shlomo pushed her away to do bia with David. Why? Because if you have bia during the pregnancy, especially during the last month of the pregnancy, the child will come out stronger and wider and with a lot of energy. So I did that for you to have all this energy to become a beautiful child, and now you're using that energy for partying. All the nashim that David HaMelech married, as soon as they became pregnant, shuv einen rois pnei melech. They would never sleep with the king again. Vani and I, dechakti v'nichnasni, I pushed myself to sleep with David HaMelech, kidei sheli ben mezuras melubem, so I should have a very special king, a special child. And look what you're doing to yourself. Another 2 minutes, and then we'll stop. Then we said, Ma bar min nadarai. Again, this is the Musar Bathsheba is giving her son Shlomo for partying so much with wine. Called Nashim Shabesavicha Yinodris Yaeli Ben Hogan Malchus. All the women that married David prayed that their son should take over the kingdom. I didn't care about the kingdom. All I cared for is Yeheli Ben Zara's Mula Batara, that you should become a big Talmud Chacham, V'Hagan Vias, and be worthy of prophecy. And the Musar continued. Alam malachim lemoyel, alam malachim shesayayim, alam malachim. She said to her son, Amrullah. She said to her son, Malacha eitzim malachim shesaysim yayin mishtakrim va'imrim lo malonu kel. Why are you hanging around, other kings that drink wine and drink? And they said, what do we need God for? Ularoiznem eishecha, misha kol rozei oilam gluin lo yishta yayin mishtakar. If you know all the secrets of the world, does it pass for you? Is it something worthy of you to drink wine and get drunk? It doesn't befit you. Ikadi Amri, others say this is what Bathsheba said to Shlomo. When you see that all the princes of the world, all the celebrities of the world come to your door, they like to hang around you. You're going to drink wine and get drunk. So basically, it seems that Shlomo HaMelech as a kid was getting drunk. How do you know Shlomo regretted and gave in to his mother? I was worse than he's describing how he was as a youth. The pasuk continues, I was worse than the man called Ish. Noach the Ish was planting grapes and drinking wine, and I was worth like him. I was like him. V'leibinas Adam Ili, I didn't have the wisdom of the Adam. Who's the Adam? The Adam Rishon. I should have taken the wisdom of what happened to Adam Rishon in the Gan Eden, that he messed up with the Eitz Hadas. So he's describing what he did wrong. So it must be that he regretted all his partying that he did when he was a youngster. This is what Shlomo got the Musar after getting the Musar from his mother. And he used the Gemara, and says, Ochal b'chavuras mitzvah. The Gemara says that if the Ben Sora Mora eats in a chabura mitzvah. So what are we talking about over here? So Ochal b'chavuras mitzvah, Omer Abba, Ein nechayev at sheyochal b'chabura shekulin srikin. He's not held liable until all the people in the group were empty-headed people. Says the Gemara, is that true? V'anan tanan, Ochal b'chavuras mitzvah ein asa ben Sora Mora. Tama, the mitzvah, because it's a mitzvah, you don't become a ben Sora Mora. Halav mitzvah, but if it wasn't a mitzvah, afagav the lav kuli srikin, even if they're all not empty-headed people or bums, you would still become a ben Sora Mara. So like I explained in the Mishnah, Hakamashmon, the afagav the kuli srikin. Even if everybody at that bris milah was a bum, but since they're sitting about a mitzvah, so then kiva the mitzvah v'kasek, since they're busy with a mitzvah, the ben Sora Mara loy mimshach will not get addicted. It's when he's eating a non-sudas mitzvah, so then it has to be with all bums, because if he's eating in a group in a non-mitzvah setting, and one of them is a righteous person, he's going to remind the kid, hey, you're doing something wrong over here. So then he won't become a ben Sora Mora. The only time he's a ben Sora Mora if he's eating in a non-mitzvah setting and everybody is a sarikin, a empty person. Okay. Ochal be'iber hachodesh. Remember, the Iber HaChodesh was a party that they made to celebrate that the Rosh Chodesh was on the 30th. The Rosh Chodesh will be on the first day and not the 30th day. So the 30th day belongs to the previous month. And they did that. They made a special party. They would go up to a roof or something and make a loud noise so that everybody realizes that the previous month was a full month of 30 days. And the next month, that the next day is the 30th day, and then following that is the first day of the month, Rosh Chodesh. So remember, the boss of Yaim Masku, did they bring meat and wine in that meal? Was that like a Sudas mitzvah? Well, Tanya, we learned in a Brisa, Ein Ein Law Elabapas Dogan Vikinius. They only brought wheat and beans. And it says the Gemara, Hakamashman, this is what it teaches you. Afagav de Ein Ein Law Elabapas Vikinius. Even though everybody else in the meal brought bread and beans, and he brought wine and meat and ate. Since they're busy in a mitzvah, then he's not going to be addicted. So if everybody's bringing their wheat and beans, and he's bringing the meat and the wine, but since it's like partial a mitzvah, so then he won't be addicted. That's a bigger chiddush, because the previous case was talking about a chaburas mitzvah where everybody in the group was eating meat and drinking wine. You don't have this Ibra Chodesh party, less than 10 people. Nobody has to bring to the party they should have wheat and bread, wheat bread. The night of the 30th night. They don't start the party during the day, only at night. For Tanya, we learned to the Brisa, they don't let the party go at night. They only let the party happen during the daytime. And says the Gemara, so he says, don't come down, don't delay to come down. So in other words, he was telling them that in other words, do it during daybreak, when people will see that it's part night and part daytime, so then the word gets out. The point of this is that the word should get out that he is that the 30th day is part of the previous month. So the more noise you can get when the night turns into day, that's the most opportune time to make this party. If the Ben Sora Mara stole his father's Ma'aser Sheni money and then bought meat and went to Jerusalem, or went to Jerusalem and bought meat, since he's eating this meat in the normal way, he's doing a mitzvah by spending his father's Ma'aser Sheni money, he's not going to get addicted to it. And again, shkotzim means he ate tummy birds. If he eats a kosher bird, you don't become a ben Sora Mora. Says the Gemara, is that true? the Mishnah says, "V'nan tanan, ochal neveos treif shkatzim monosim." If he eats a non-kosher bird, shkatzim, you don't become a ben saramara. Ha tarim, but if you eat a chicken, nasa ben saramara, you do become a ben saramara. So how do you square that off with what Rav said? And says the Gemara, nami mishnisin lahashlam. Our Mishnah is discussing when, in other words, if you eat kosher birds, you don't become. If you eat chicken, you don't become a ben saramara. But if, let's say you ate kosher meat and a little kazayas less than a tartimer, and then to mashlam that, to complete that process, you ate neveos, treifis, shkotzim, ramosim. You ate non-kosher birds. Then, only then you don't become a ben saramara. But if you ate mostly meat and you eat a little bit of chicken, you will become a ben saramara. And that's how you read the Mishnah. And what's the reason why if you eat non-kosher meat at all, you don't become a ben saramara? Again, because the Torah says that the parents complain that he's not listening to us, but must be that it's just us, and not he's not listening to you, God, because that would not make him a ben saramara. If he's also not listening to the Eibishter by eating treifus, he would not become a ben saramara. Finally, the Gemara says, "Achal davish mitzvah dvar avera, dvar mitzvah tanchu me'evelim." He's eating something which is like a mitzvah. It's not a sudas mitzvah, but he's eating like the first meal that avelim are eating. So it's the mitzvah to join the avelim when they're eating their first meal. It's not really a mitzvah, like a sudas mitzvah. Dvar avera, if he eats something that's sort of an avera, he's doing an avera. He's not eating treifus, but he's eating on a tainis tzibar. So still, that's enough to disqualify him from becoming a saramara. The time am I? What's wrong with eating on a tainis? And what's wrong with violating God's commandments? What makes you not a ben saramara? Because the pasuk says, "Amakra einenu shemenu b'kailenu." He's not listening to our voice. B'kailenu is not listening to our voice. But not that he's not listening to God's, the voice of God. So it's even though you would think if he's not listening to God's voice and he's not listening to our voice, the parent's voice, he should become a ben saramara. But the Torah says not so. He has to be a frum Jew that's doing Torah mitzvahs. The only thing is he's not listening to his parents' musar, and that's what makes a ben saramara. Okay, we stop here.